All right, so hopefully we are up and running and all set to go live. We got people waiting to get into the waiting room, so I'm gonna let them in. All right, there's Corey and there is Mark. Full house tonight.
Hey, hey,
Hey, hey,
can you see me?
I can see you, I can hear you, and we should be live. We should have Corey up. I can see you, Corey. I can hear you.
What to do, Corey?
What's going on, y'all? What's going on?
It's going to do what it's going to do.
My brothers.
So good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Sabrina Black, and I want to welcome you to the conversation on race with the BMWs. As you know, the BMW stands for the Black Men of Wealth, of Wisdom, and Wit. And I am just so honored tonight to have all of them joining me. For those of you who have been following the broadcast the past 2 weeks, you know that we have a regular panel of 5 to 7 guys who join us. And we've been advertising that if you wanted to be a part of the conversation tonight, we were opening the panel up. And so we have 6 new guests on tonight. And I am just so excited about what these guys have to say. I got to tell you, I kind of got a little bit of a pushback and it kind of startled me some. Somebody asked me, why is it that I wanted to only have guys who defied the stereotype? And I thought, you know, there is so much bad press already. I did not want to have those brothers. And so I wanted to have the guys who are not the high school dropouts, who are not the deadbeat dads, the guys who are not strung out on drugs, the guys who are not in prison. But it is not to say that those guys don't have value, because every man, every woman, every boy, every girl is essential. So it's not just essential workers. They are essential people, people of value, no matter what color you are, because we are all one race, although we're many colors. And so there are other shows that I'm going to be doing. So after the conversation with these BMWs, there's another conversation coming up, and it's the conversation on color. And it's going to be a group of assorted chocolates going to come together and talk about the different issues of being light skinned versus dark skinned. There's also a show coming up behind that, talking about life after incarceration. What is it like to be a Black person coming out of prison, trying to get a job and trying to navigate society? There's a show coming up on voting. And so there are a lot of other broadcasts. But for this show are the guys that are the BMWs, those guys of wealth, of wisdom, and wit. And I'm so honored to have them with us here tonight. And so you know the regulars, you know Corey, you know Vaughn. We're praying for Jonathan tonight. John is not able to be with us. Unfortunately, his dad died today. And so we want to keep him in our prayers. It's public information. He's already posted it, so do lift him up. We have Ken. And so again, you know the regular guys, but we have some new ones on tonight. And so I'm going to ask the new guys if they would. If you would just one by one, unmute your mic and introduce yourself. Give us a little bit about who you are and those key things that people need to know. So welcome to the conversation on race.
I guess I'll introduce myself first. My name is Solomon Dudley. First off, thank you to Dr. Black. You are an amazing family friend of my parents, so I'm so excited to be here. A little bit about myself. I am the youngest of 3 children, Michael and Andre Dudley. They are the most amazing parents. I guess I like to brag about my mom and dad just because they are so amazing. So upbringing, I knew about race, but I didn't necessarily have to address it head on just because of where we lived. But now more than ever, it's an important part of the conversation. So I'm excited to be here talking about that. I am a University of Michigan Dearborn student, majoring in public health right now. So when I'm not in the classroom, I am the orientation program assistant for the orientations freshmen and transfers. So I do get to work closely with the 20 or so orientation leaders who are educating and getting the newest freshmen and incoming students ready for classes starting in fall. So that's a little bit about me. I love the fine arts and theater, and that's where Dr. Black and I kind of get to have a conversation. I do have an upcoming benefit production for the COVID-19 relief called Solomon and Friends. I get to be a little selfish there, get to put myself in the forefront, but it is a benefit production for COVID-19 So I will have 10 to 11 actors and actresses via Zoom performing some of our favorite Broadway songs, which is very exciting, on August 8th at 7 p.m. So I'll actually drop the link below in a second, but so excited to be here. I'm so excited to have a great conversation with another group of amazing men tonight. So
Great. Thank you so much, Solomon, and welcome to the conversation. Definitely, you want to make sure that you sign up for that benefit production that Solomon is doing. It is a free event. How about that? And so you can come and invite your family and friends to join as well. And then if you would like to give a donation, please do, because it is going to help COVID relief. As you know, we are right in the middle of a pandemic and lots of pandemonium. So it's crazy all over the world. And so we want to do whatever we can to help. So who else want to jump in right now and give us a little bit about who you are? Some of the new guys.
I'll go real quick. My name is Adam Thomason. My South African name given to me is Lumkile, is Xhosa. I'm a full-time filmmaker. Company is called Three Strand Films. Fortunate to shoot a documentary in Ghana on the slave castles there and the migration from northern Ghana to the West Coast. Train at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels, focusing on the slave trade and the American church's hypocrisy. And yeah, currently living in Atlanta via Detroit, born and raised, love Detroit. Those my roots. Shout out to the D. Yeah, so I'm excited for this conversation. Shout out to my mom. She connected me with Dr. Sabrina Black, and I'm just honored to be here.
Okay, now, Adam, you know, if you're going to give a shout out to your mom, you got to say your mom's name.
Oh, yeah. Denise Smith, you know, so.
Yeah, and definitely want to give a shout out to Denise Smith. Denise is going to be my co-host for the show on colorism. Denise and I are working on the project together about assorted chocolates. And this is a project that goes years back. Her and I had several conversations before, and now is the time. You know, there's an appointed time for everything, and this is the hour for that. If you got a chance to watch the show last week, you know that we talked some about the slave trade and the impact still of slavery. We talked about Elmina Castle, as well as the points of no return, not only in Ghana, but also in Senegal and in Tanzania. We also had another filmmaker that's on board as well. So Adam, the two of you need to hook up after the show and kind of talk about some potential projects together, and he'll get a chance to introduce themselves a little bit later. All right, so another new guy, let's hear from you.
I can go. So my name is Dedrick Tillerson. I am originally from Henderson, Kentucky, the sticks of Kentucky, like I like to say. I am a graduate of University of Kentucky, Go Cats, where I was an athlete as well in the sport of track and field. I am a retired 400-meter hurdler professionally, retired in 2010. And I've been living in Atlanta. I own actually 3 businesses. I have a nonprofit that's dedicated to the development of LGBT sports. And I also own an organization called Till the Soil, which is a play on my last name. But I'm an HR vet, a human resources veteran. I've been in the industry for about 13 years. And so I branched off and started my own organization to where I am a career coach, and I also go in to help nonprofits upstart their HR departments. So I have done a number of things here in the Atlanta area in the community. I continue to throw sporting events. I continue to partner with organizations to do that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
What do you mean, pretty much it? That's a lot. I mean, most people wish to accomplish that much in a lifetime. And so thank you for sharing those things. I'm going to go ahead and call on Mark Crear to go next, because you talked about running track and field and doing hurdles. And Mark is a 2-time Olympian. And so, Mark, if you want to come on and share a little bit about yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now? Do I know you, man? How about I see you? Not the hat, the glasses.
I definitely know you.
Yeah, my bad. Well, I'm not gonna keep y'all. My name is Mark Crear. I've known Sabrina. Gosh, I don't know how long. We go back with this organization.
Way back, Mark. Way
back. Considering the word back, from this Black African American Christian Counselors Organization, which is a part of AACC. For the short term, I'm a racial reconciliation, multicultural mental health advocate. So that means I do counseling, coaching, consulting, and a focus of making people culturally competent as well as culturally sensitive, and just bringing tools and resources to those that are dealing with mental health issues, just speaking to the people that look like us, minorities and diverse, those individuals that would like counseling but need it to have the flavor that we can learn from and heal from. Oh yeah, I ran a track too, ran a couple of Olympics, got a couple of medals, praise God. 3 steps, not no 13 or 12, but we did 3. How many steps you take? 13?
Sorry, 12. I'm
12.
6'5".
12.
I was able to do what Edwin Moses.
Only Kevin Young did that. Yeah,
And
but
Edwin Moses.
and I just want to say to the other, I do have some theatrical skills. So my brother Gonda film, we could do one over here, and I just want to know. I got some skills I can act.
Got you.
Everybody
Got
wants to
you.
be a star of the next film.
Got you, man.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Mark talked about being part of BAC, the Black African American Christian Council, and we'll talk some about that as we talk about identity issues. Because I got to tell you, even trying to come up with a name for the organization, Mark, you remember it was an identity issue. Do we call ourselves Black? Do we call ourselves African Americans? Are we Black African Americans? And it was a process to come up with that name.
Yes.
But Mark was also the president of the BACC for the term after I was president. And so it was really great that we got a chance to share that experience together. Also, I'm currently the president of the National Association of Biblical Counselors, and we've had Mark in as one of our conference speakers. And so if you're looking for speakers, everybody on the panel is qualified even to come in and do speaking, to do counseling, to do coaching, and to provide any number of services for you. All right, Marcus, go ahead and unmute and let's hear a little bit about who you are.
Yes, thank you for having me, Dr. Black, and thank you to Solomon for making the initial connection. I really appreciate it. A little bit about myself. Grew up in Michigan, born and raised in Canton, Michigan. I graduated from Plymouth High School in 2014 and matriculated to Harvard University in Boston and graduated in 2018 and moved to New York to work as a speechwriter at a speech writing firm, in addition to being a writer. And so in September of 2019, I released my first book, which is titled Timestamp Musings of an Introverted Black Boy. So that's, being a writer is kind of mostly what I do and hope to continue to do in the future. So I'm happy to be here and happy to be a part of the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcus. Any shout outs? Anybody? I heard one person give a shout out, only Adam. Anybody else got shout outs you need to do to anybody? All right, that was open mic. Okay, so let's hear from some of the other guys who have been part of the ongoing panel. We didn't hear from Terrence. Where's Terrence? All right, Terrence.
I'm here. Thank you. First, let me just say thank you. Let me give you a shout out, Dr. Black, for even having the idea, putting this idea to work, putting feet on this idea. This is a great deal that we're able to hear from so many of these fine, distinguished fellas.
That's what I'm saying.
So good stuff. I'm glad that we're able to do that. I'm Terrence Quinn. I am an attorney here in Michigan. I am born and raised in Flint Town. I'm a Flintstone, and I'm talking about the real city of Flint. Good stuff. So I went to college at U of M. I played a little football while I was there back in the days when we used to win most of our games all the time. But we're getting back to that. Got to give a shout out to Solomon there, who's at U of M right now, fellow Wolverine. Good stuff. So right now I own my own law firm in Metro Detroit. I specialize in estate planning, wills and trusts, probate law, as well as elder law. So I spend my days dealing with people who are dealing with tough stuff and showing them that there's hope at the end and helping them navigate all that while I'm working to help families generate wealth for themselves as well as for the next generation. So that's what I do. A lot of webinars, a lot of workshops. I'm out there getting a lot of info out. Also just recently got re-elected as chair of the real property probate estate planning section of the National Bar, which is the oldest all-Black bar association in the country. So doing a lot of work with that as well. So thank you so much. I'm gonna give a shout out to Vaughn for connecting me with you, Dr. Black, so that we can participate here. So thank you.
No, I'm sorry. Aren't you Terrence Quinn that played on that 1997 national championship team with Charles Woodson and Tom Brady? Is that you? I thought I recognized you. What's up, TQ?
What's up, man? Yeah, that was back in the day when we used to beat Ohio State every year. But we're getting back to that. We're getting back to that.
You guys are funny. Listen, and I'm glad you did the little shout out over there, Bob, because when Terrence and I first talked, I laughed because he says, yeah, I'm part of the NBA. And I was like, really, man, we got so many sports figures on the call. And then he says, not that NBA, the National Bar Association. I tell you, acronyms can get you in trouble. So, but glad to have everybody and whatever acronyms you have. If you got a BA, if you got BS, and some people do, if you got an MA, MS, a PhD, a HD, whatever you got, we're glad to have you. And I know sometimes people say it's all alphabet soup anyway, you know, because even without a degree, we talked about this on a previous show that sometimes it's just important to have a trade. And even sometimes if you don't have a trade, it's important to have an idea and to be an entrepreneur and to be able to create. And so, you know, we know that college is not cut out for everybody and everybody doesn't do well academically, but that doesn't mean you won't do well in life because there are other things that you can still excel at. And so we want to hear from some of the regular panelists. Some of you didn't get a chance to give a shout out or didn't give a chance to talk about a little bit more about what you do and some of the projects and programs that you have coming up. So why don't you guys go ahead and jump in and do that at this time as the conversation continues.
Sabrina, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, Mark, you can ask your question.
Okay,
right
I feel like this is a Tupac and Biggie. Is all these East Coast? Am I the only West Coast? Well, let me put it up. West Side? I mean, you got Michigan. I'm from California. I went to USC. You know, Trojans. Is there any West Coast people over here?
Wait. You was at USC when?
Buddy, date me. I was there with Curtis Conway. I went there in 92, 93.
Okay, so you know Robert Pack and Lorenzo Orr.
Very well. Pac-Man, right. What you talking about?
Pac is my buddy.
I'm glad
I can't tell you my pre-save name. Oh, I'm sorry, we're live. I can't tell you my pre-save name, but you know, tell him he might not even know who Mark Crear is. So
you can drop it in the chat box. You don't have to say it live. We don't do it live. All right. Okay, but Vaughn, while you have your mic unmuted, why don't you go ahead, Vaughn, and tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go ahead into the rest of the existing panel.
Well, you know what? One of the things people don't know is I've been in ministry since like 1989. And one of the highlights wasn't just the success that we had at Eastern Michigan, but on a college campus, we would have 150 to 200 college students every Monday night for Bible study. And as I look at that, we developed some, just out of our leadership focus, we developed about 12 pastors who's pastoring or in ministry today. And so I think that's one of the, you know, one of those things that I usually don't bring to the table. But just, you know, my skill set or my purpose and passion when it comes to ministry is to get people to not only believe what they believe, but to have a strong foundation as to why they believe what they believe. And so ministry to me is one of the things that I love to do. I love to teach. And, you know, I love it. Back over to you.
That's good to hear. You know, it's interesting because Vaughn, if you remember, Mark was talking about how long him and I have known each other. You and I have known each other for eons as well. And I remember you from back in the day from YTB. And I don't know how many people remember YTB, but we were entrepreneurs even back then, and we were doing travel business. And so traveling the world is not a new thing. That's something that we were doing as leisure before we started doing it as ministry. But so when I think about you, I often think about you as an entrepreneur and definitely as a leader. But it's good to know that you're a leader in the kingdom and you're a leader in ministry and you're helping to shape this generation. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Somebody else want to jump in? Ken, want to jump in?
Yes, my name is Ken Black. I would say things that maybe I hadn't shared before. I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur. I get that from my mom, my dad, everyone in my family. Currently, what I'm actually trying to do is work with other people on developing their, entrepreneurship skill sets, especially a lot of young men that were formerly, you know, in the street life, and showing them how to translate that. Sometimes we just don't know how to code switch, so you have to show them how to take what they already know. They have some entrepreneurial skill set. They know how to make different connections. Just show them how to put that in a different light. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm doing right now. Here locally, and also, of course, connecting locally, volunteering with different food banks, identifying where we have food deserts at, and taking a moment to, and I'll drop some information in there, to help community centers build what I call self-irrigating planters, so that we can actually not only, one of the quickest fix that we can do for food deserts is help people start to grow their own food. So showing people how to go back to having the home gardens that I know a lot of my people were from the South, so we always had home gardens, tomatoes and such. So going back to those things, the basics.
Great, thank you so much, Ken. And for those of you who don't know, who haven't seen the previous shows, Ken Black is actually my son, and I'm a proud mom. Thanks, Ken. All right, somebody else? Timashion, where are you?
Aki. I'm here. What up, though?
Oliotia.
Here we go.
Abarigada Rafiki.
Abarigada, yes. What's going on? Timashion Visionaire. West side of Detroit. So, Mark, don't feel, out of place. I'm from the west side of Detroit. So, I throw the W up too. Something I didn't share with you all. So I am a filmmaker. I probably produced about 6 or 7 films. And one of the ones that I did wanted to bring up was the one I did about Africa. So I did go to Ethiopia and Egypt, and I did a whole documentary that I'm getting scored right now that I want to release pretty soon. But that's one of my favorite ones that I wanted to share. Also, I did this thing in 2013. I started what I call a 2020 Vision Group. And 2020 Vision Group, I said, I know it's like a group of some phenomenal people that's doing great things. I said, okay, well, I invited them all to my house. It was about 50 people at my house, and I gave them each 5 minutes to tell us where they see themselves in the year 2020 and what they plan on doing to get to that point. And for the last 7 years, I've seen people grow their businesses. I've seen people write books. I've seen people start nonprofit organizations, like people that laid their ideas out in 2013. We had another vision party in 2015. And I even had more people that kind of shared all the things that they were going to do by the year 2020. And a lot of people did some phenomenal stuff. But we all were excited about 2020 in 2013. And in 2015, we were very excited about 2020. Then 2020 happened. So now I think we need to do another 2020 vision party, because we got to cast a new vision for 2020, because a lot of our businesses and ideas and organization have to shift, right? Have to start looking at things with a new lens and a new model. So I'll probably end up doing that in a couple of months. Just bring everybody back from the last 7 years and have a big 2020 vision party and share with us, where do you see yourself in 2025, I guess. Let's just take it now. Let's still 2021. Let's take it one step at a time.
I still say 2020 because the vision is for us to be able to see clearly.
It is 2020. Yeah.
But Timashion, I hate to do corrections when people talk, but when you say that you are a film producer or a filmmaker, you have to say an award-winning filmmaker. I mean, because you've received multiple awards for your films. This is not you a guy with a camera at home making pictures.
So that's why I love you so much, Dr. Black, because it don't feel right for me to just say I'm an Emmy-winning filmmaker, because it seems like I'm just bragging on myself or something or whatever. It's cool. I appreciate that. But when somebody else say it, it makes it even sweeter, you know.
But I just want all of you guys to know that I'm gonna be lifting up your names in days to come, months and years to come. I'm gonna often be saying, hey, you guys should have saw the show that Dedrick was on. You should have been there when Mark was talking. Man, you didn't get a chance to hear Terrence. Oh, you got to tune in and hear Ken. You got to tune in and hear Timashion. You got to touch space for Vine. I'm gonna be calling your names if nobody else is, because I believe in all of you. I believe in you, Marcus. I believe in you, Solomon, all of you guys. And that's why you're at the table. And so if you're just tuning in, I want to encourage you to like, to share, to tag some people, invite some people to the conversation. And as we have this conversation on race, you know, so much can be said, but we want to kind of put it out there. And one of the things that Jonathan said at the end of the last conversation, he talked about this idea of being woke. Yeah, and people are often throwing that term around, you know, he's woke, he's not woke or whatever. And I remember this must have been, this was during the back days, Mark, so you know how long ago it was, but we were getting ready to do a conference in Dallas, and one of the speakers there was Dr. Freddie Hayes, a phenomenal brother, and we were on the bus going to the hotel, and him and I were talking. He said, you know what, that's a conscious sister right there. And I was like, oh, he talking about me. And I was like, I'm a conscious sister, you know. And so I think being conscious back then was like the equivalent of being woke now. So talk for a moment, if you would, about what does that mean even? You know, it's whoever wants to jump in. I'm going to give at least 3 or 4 of you an opportunity to give your definition of what it means to be woke.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm Corey from the past couple of weeks from Detroit, Michigan, currently live in Dallas, Texas. I guess I don't really even have anything really to pump, so it was good that we kind of just move forward fast.
What you talk about? Yes, you do have something to pump. You are all about the business, Corey. Listen, one of the things that you are a big advocate is on voters' rights and the need to vote, and so that is something to pump.
Oh, absolutely, and I guess I'm going to say that I guess this kind of fits into that. Education to me is what it means to be woke. Informing yourself. And that's kind of what I like to pump. Like you just said, I love for people to know stuff and then to share that information with others. And I mean, for a myriad of reasons, that's important. Historically, we weren't allowed to learn. So we had to learn for ourselves and spread that information. And I think that those concepts are still key today. Even when I listen to like everything that everybody has said here today, the things that they're doing to help other people are the things that they are currently doing to enrich their own lives is helping other people, whether it's financial literacy, through filmmaking, speech writing. Like everybody has something amazing that they did, and it's all helping people. So, and to me, just educating yourself and then helping others, letting others know what you know, that's what being woke is.
You know what, Corey, it's interesting that you talk about the importance of education, because I'm telling you, I was so tempted last week, and I didn't do it then, but I'm gonna do it now. When you talked about graduating from school and what people didn't know about you on the job and how other people were being promoted ahead of you who didn't have the same qualifications that you have, one of the things I wanted to say was lauded, magna cum laude. But I thought, don't go there. But I'm thinking I'm going there this week, because it's something to be said about a brother who graduates magna cum laude, you know. And so that was a great accomplishment that people need to hear about. And so education is important. You know, I talked to a brother earlier today, and it was really interesting because he talked about, again, this idea of self-education. And he said he grew up learning, teaching himself by reading the Bible, reading the encyclopedia, and reading words from the dictionary every day. Yeah, and I think that's something that we can all do, you know, as an education, to just get in the book, man. And so this guy has a very extensive vocabulary, very articulate, and he uses words intentionally. And so he doesn't do semantics or play terminology, but every word is intentional because he understands words. And so I think that's something that we could all benefit from. All right, somebody else, what it means to be woke. All right, Adam, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking Carter G. Woodson said that there is this idea of education, but there is also a miseducation
of the Negro.
Of the Negro that happens.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think to be woke and conscious is to understand that they're trying to miseducate you to keep you to perpetuate certain things of their system. And I would say for the successful Black man on this panel, and yourself, Dr. Sabrina Black, we've had to be mindful of what W.E.B. Du Bois talks about as a double consciousness. You see what I'm saying? So we're aware that we got to take two sets of notes, so to speak. So that's kind of what I would say on that point.
I love that idea, two sets of notes. And you're right, you talk about the miseducation. It's interesting, on one of my earlier trips to Africa, I was, I think, Uganda. This would have been almost 30 years ago. They were talking about countries and continents and the size of things. And they were saying, and they showed me this map. And I'm looking at the map thinking, those sizes are wrong. And they said, only in America, only in the US, is your country and your continent bigger than everybody else's.
Right.
Like, that is not the actual map. And so there's this new video that's in circulation right now with Jane Elliott, and she's been doing a lot of things on race and racial reconciliation, talking about the distortion even of the map, and how the sizing and the positioning of things makes it look like we're greater than we are or bigger than we are, with the mindset that it makes other people seem small. And so again, a lot of miseducation from history to social studies to every topic you can think of. We've had miseducation, and it's important that we begin to teach ourselves the truth. Somebody else, what does it mean to be woke?
But I was going to jump in there and share and say, to be woke is, in my opinion, one of the key elements is you have to be intentional in your efforts. And I think one of the things that we have an opportunity, a lot of people, when they say that they're woke, it's all intrinsic. But to me, to be woke is about recognizing things outside of you, things that really don't impact you, but they do impact you. Like, for example, I would say I became woke to misogyny when I had a daughter, because before then I had a boy. So I didn't understand misogyny. I didn't even understand, like, I love rap. I grew up on hip hop, right? But I didn't understand all the misogyny until I had a daughter. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. So that woke me up. But then it had to be intentional in my efforts to try to understand everything that could impact not only, her as my daughter, a woman, a Black woman, and all of those things. So I think, to me, being woke is stepping outside yourself and trying to really go there for the other person and having that empathy. So that is, to me, one of the key elements of wokeness. It's not just about you. And a lot of times people who say that they're woke, it's all about them. Because guess what? I realized that I'm this and I'm that. But no, I realize what I am because of what I see around me. I understand the strengths of someone with a disability, someone that's a different gender. And when I can have that empathy, that to me is woke.
All right, great. All right, Solomon, I saw you ready to jump in.
So I'm actually going to take it a little bit backtrack, kind of the reverse of what Ken said. The current events that took place, they took a toll on me a lot, just because of quarantine and it all happening at the exact same time. So for me, it really meant shutting off the television and shutting off my phone, shutting off every single piece of media I was on. Like, I had an Apple Watch, I had iPhone, and it was bombarding me like completely. So I had to really be conscious with where I was putting my energy and like where I was focusing on, because that took a lot, and it takes a lot out of you, especially when you're witnessing a man put a neck on another man. So there was, of course, some trauma that came up that I didn't even know existed or that could exist. So for me, it really meant taking a look at where I was in that moment in time, so that I don't say something that I'll regret 5 minutes later or even 10 years later, so that I can move forward and educate myself, educate those around me. Because if I don't know who I am and where I'm at in that moment, then I don't really have any business telling someone else, because I didn't do the job myself. So just taking inventory of where I'm at daily before I try to tell someone else what to do, I have to do it myself. And that's really helped the past, I don't know, maybe 2 months or so. Just being intentional with my efforts. Who am I talking to? When do I talk to them? Do I talk to them like out of good heart, or do I talk to them like out of combativeness or trying to get my point across and not letting them share themselves? So For me, it's just being aware of where you're at in the moment. I'm very aware that I'm Black. So yeah, that feeling of being self-aware, yeah, it kind of goes out the window when I leave my door in my apartment, because outside of there, like outside of here, I'm Black. So it's really playing that double, taking the notes on both sides, where you have to realize as much self-awareness as I want to have outside of here, I'm Black. But it's also realizing that I have much more to share, and in good heart, I can share it and I can educate and I can give back where I can, but I can't do that unless I'm okay with myself. And I know whose I am, and I know who I am personally, and I know what my family says about me. So that's what woke means to me. It's changed over, I guess, over my time in 22 years, but I'm okay with that. So yeah.
But you know, even Solomon, as you share about being woke, it's kind of like a continuum. So definitely self-awareness is the beginning of being woke. You know, being aware of yourself and your presence and who you are, where you are. But then, as Ken was saying, to be aware of what's going on outside and around you is another level of consciousness. You know, even as you guys talk about these two different levels of wokeness, I have a chance to, you talked about COVID and shutting in. You know, when everybody else was shutting in during COVID-19 and people were trying to figure out what to do with themselves, and everybody was binge watching on Netflix and getting caught up on all their old shows, I was working, you know. And so I think Terrence talked about the level of people who are going through and dealing with different life issues. And somebody else talked about the trauma that people are going through. Well, as a professional counselor, as a mental health practitioner, that's what I've been busy dealing with, helping people process their grief and deal with their trauma and those types of issues. But this last week, Solomon, I got a chance to just shut in and do nothing but get caught up on some films. And I got to tell you, it was absolutely hilarious, the number of Black films that are on TV in the evening, late at night. So when I'm up trying to get paperwork done and I'm watching some stuff in the background. So there's two different movies that talked about being woke. And you guys may remember some of these. Both movies were Spike Lee. At the end of one movie, at the end of, he was running through the courtyard screaming, "Wake up! Wake up!" That's
School days.
School days.
Yes.
Everybody remember. So in the school days, he shouted, "Wake up!" But then at the beginning of the next movie, talk about a continuum. At the beginning of Do the Right Thing, guess what they shouting? Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! And so there's been this ongoing call for years for our people to wake up. But not only for us to wake up, but for white people to wake up and people of every other color to wake up and pay attention to what's happening with you, your own internal biases, your own internal oppressions, but also to wake up to the things that are happening to other people. Somebody else talk about what it means to be woke for you.
You know what, I can, say this, and I think a lot of people hit on it. Being woke is not, I can tell you what is not dying with the GoFundMe account. One of the things that we have to begin to do, especially in our community, is I don't know how many times I've worked in the city of Detroit, and there was some old guy who was a substance abuser, right? We would call him a drunk, who was woke. He understood. I mean, you guys have them in your family. You got people in your family, they woke, but they're just stagnant.
Don't we talk about Uncle George and Uncle John?
No, you know what? They woke. I mean, you talk about education, man, they can tell you about this book they read, about that book they read, but it was just something in life that just kept them there. And so as we talk about being woke, it is almost in a sense where you just don't wake up one day, you get up the next day, and then there's a journey, and there's this, we got to include the economic empowerment and financial literacy. It isn't just all about culture, because there's a book that I read that says a righteous man leaves an inheritance. To his children's children. I don't know how more woke you can get when we start talking about being culturally aware of who you are, having a plan on what or how you're going to get there. And then, like Ken said, and everybody else, how we're going to impact people once we leave. And one of the things I would love to talk about is if Dr. King only was woke, but he didn't take action steps, how woke would he have been? If Malcolm just didn't take action steps, but he just educated himself, how woke would he have been? Whether it's W.B. Du Bois or Booker T, or even Dr. Sabrina Black. Over to you.
You're right about it. And so being woke is about not dying broke and leaving an inheritance for your children and your children's children. You know, I know that's one of the things that Terrence does by profession is help people prepare for end of life. But, you know, we don't want to talk about end of life stuff in our community. You know, we're going to live forever. You know, and yes, there is life after this life, but while we're here in this life, we have a responsibility to do some things. And so if somebody, again, want to jump in and talk about what it means to be woke, even in preparation for the next generation.
Yeah, let me jump in and just kind of piggyback off of what Von just talked about. As we were talking about that, what I was thinking about is like maybe 3 phases. And as I keep thinking, I probably can add more, or three components of being woke. First is being woke about who you are, being woke about where you are, your positioning. I'd say secondly, what I'm hearing here is being woke about what's going on in the community, whether that's local, whether it's national, whether that's global, whatever it is, being woke about what's happening in our world. But then the third is kind of like some of what Von was saying, being woke about what does that then mean? Woke to your purpose. What should you do about all of that? What do? You know about you. You're paying attention. And that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind when you said what's being woke. I said it's constantly paying attention to what's going on with you, with the community, but then with what that means about how you need to proceed in our world and how all of that impacts everything and works together. One component of that, like you both just mentioned, is that whole generational wealth deal, that whole taking care of business deal, the work that we do at my firm. And you know, I get in conversation with a lot of people very often who come in and have, I mean, you know, the whole spectrum of ideas and positions on whether or not they should do it and why they don't want to do it now and why they don't need it, all the way to taking care of it right now. But at the end of the day, that stuff boils down to 2 major questions. What happens after you're gone, to your stuff and to your family? What happens if when you're alive, you can't make decisions for yourself anymore? So when we talk about really taking care of that business, we got to deal with those questions head on, so that when we come back to our community in particular, we're positioning ourselves and the generations to succeed because of what we've been able to leave to the generations, not just money, but values and beliefs, but certainly money and assets as well. Other cultures do it. In our culture, we can continue to do it even better than we do. Back to you.
You know, as we talk about this idea of being woke, again, we're talking about this transition from one generation to the next, you know, and part of this idea of being woke to who you are and then who to the community says you are and what your purpose is in the community. Adam, if you could jump in and talk a little bit about the PSA that you did, just kind of describe that, but definitely drop the link, because I think it speaks to this idea of being conscious, of being woke to who I am, but then having to deal with what society says. And then behind Adam, I want to hear from Solomon and Dedrick and Marcus as the next generation that things are being passed on to.
Yeah, so I did a PSA, a public service announcement, you know, and that's in the wake of the Spike Lees, the Dear White Peoples, and things like that as an inspiration. But essentially what I was trying to communicate is what I feel the double consciousness, triple, quadruple consciousness that, you know, we as Black folks have to walk through, you know, get this degree and these things will open up. Oh, but you need this degree and you need that degree and you need that degree. And I remember, I would say the culmination of all these things with Amy Cooper, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, like that culmination, I wanted to communicate something in art that spoke to our wrestle. And I felt the conclusion is this: if you see the PSA, it's none of those degrees are floating over our heads when we get pulled over. You know, Solomon said it earlier, he goes, when I walk out the house, I'm Black. And that's a dub, but think about that. Like, all of us have all these degrees. We could say, you know, Dr. Sabrina Black. We could say Emmy award-winning filmmaker. You know, we could say award-winning filmmaker. But once you get in that car, there's nothing floating over your head to tell people who you are. And that's really that though we're liberated, that's that societal human rights prison that I think Malcolm X was trying to lobby for in the United Nations, and say, no, this ain't about civil rights. This is about human rights in United Nations. You need to step in. So I wanted to do a public service announcement to kind of speak to that humanity that we still are void of, not because we don't see ourselves as human, but because there tends to be a double handling of our Black skin versus everybody else's skin, even with all the degrees.
All right, young guys, with all the new degrees, talk some about what it's like to be in college, to have degrees, like you say, because that stuff is not floating over your head. And when you get pulled over driving while Black, ain't nobody gonna ask for your resume. And so talk about that double-edged sword that you have to live with, and how you have to be woke in this generation.
I can answer that. I think one thing that I realized being at Harvard, and people look at that school and like think about like, oh, the name and the prestige. But like you said, when I was in New York, when I was right before my senior year, when I got slapped by the police, like no one's checking for your Harvard degree. No one's checking for like how many awards you got or what schools you got into, because at the end of the day, that Blackness is the cloak that you wear every day. And I think going back to this question about what is being passed down from the generations. And I think for me, when I look at my generation and during college studying the past generation, is how much it's important to embrace the Black radical tradition. Like we often think, like I think a lot of people look at this current generation and the things that it's doing and the calls that it's making, whether it's defunding the police or abolishing prisons, like things that seem very radical. But if you think about it, and when you study the history, you realize that this Black radical tradition, this tradition of imagining worlds outside of the ones that we were birthed into, is part of our tradition. And I think this generation is really trying to interrogate the fact that we've been here for 400 years and we've tried reforms in many different ways. We've tried movements in many different ways, but something's still not clicking. And so now our generation is beginning to say, like, what if we imagine, like Dr. King talked about the beloved community, but what if we imagine a Black radical future that is free of prisons, that is free of police, that imagines another way of organizing society? And I think that's what gives me hope as a member of my generation. But then when you read, you also realize that other generations were saying the same things. And a lot of times they were either silenced, they were policed. Like there's a whole history behind the fact that there's an original speech that John Lewis was supposed to give on the March of Washington that was far more radical than the one that he actually had to give, because the civil rights leaders at that time kind of curtailed it in a way that made it more palatable to white audiences, to the movement in general. And so I think it's about doing that history, that education, and then embracing that more radical imagination tradition, because that's our history and that's what our ancestors were doing. And I think it's our job to carry on that imagination, that dream, if you will.
I like that, brother. Keep talking that.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Go ahead, Dedrick.
So when I think about woke, I've been often throwing around this term called social responsibility, and from where I sit at, and I say that because being woke for me, I'm involved in quite a bit, and involved in a lot of the Atlanta community, the Atlanta LGBT community, which is a subset of its own, culture of its own. But the reality of the situation is what are my actions into how it relates to what and how I'm going to impact either today's today or today's tomorrow. So when I think about being woke, and oftentimes I've told my friends, like, my social responsibility is to make sure that you all know what pushing for tomorrow looks like. I don't work 14 jobs. That's just me saying that. I don't do 14 different jobs because of the fact that, I like to do them, but each one of them has a certain level of impact that I like to share with different people as they come along. I didn't know at one point in time in my life, people were like, oh, you just never know who's watching you. So when I'm doing things, I have to realize that, when I'm walking into a boardroom and I'm the only Black gay male that walks into that boardroom, I'm not walking into the room, to make friends with you all. I'm going in there to kick the door down and make room for everyone else that comes in that looks, acts, talks, walks like me. I'm also the person that, I don't wear my sexuality on my shoulders, which a lot of people seem to think that, in this whole Black Lives Matter movement, and all lives matter movement, like there's some people that will argue and say, hey, listen, LGBT lives don't matter. Well, what's the difference? I'm Black and I'm gay. So, you know, and I'm just as educated and experienced and cultured as you are. So let's change the narrative here. Let's have a different level of conversation. So my woke is how I socially impact the people, the things, the atmospheres that I walk into. So.
Well said, well said. Somebody else, another one of the young brothers.
I'll say something else. So just growing up in Canton, it's very diverse, but predominantly Caucasian, Middle Eastern, Asian, that side of the spectrum. So at my high school, I was, of course, like it was a good representation of African-American or Black, but it's like you either are one or the other, you're not both. And then I have to ask, who do I communicate with? Who do I become friends with? And that was like, those are real, like that's real dialogue that went through my head. It's like, do I become friends with the Caucasians that accept me, or do I become friends with this group of Black people that they're nice to me, but they also like looked at me and said, oh, you're not wearing any Jordans, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And that was like real dialogue. And I don't know about you, Marcus, or not, came from similar background, high school, but I was looked at very differently. So when I went into the classroom, of course, I was looked at by teachers as saying, oh, he's so respectful and he's so mannerable and he's so nice and well-spoken and very, he's unique, but he's also this young, nice Black man. And I got that a lot, but I just got he's this really nice Black boy. And I never understood that until a couple months ago. I'm like, oh, wow, that's racism right there. Like, I'm glad that you're saying I'm nice, but there's a lot more that are just like me who are a little bit more educated than I am, who are just as well-spoken, if not more well-spoken than I am, who have dreams and goals and visions. So I'm being looked at as this anomaly. And of course, that's kind of not just palpitating, but also very lonely at times. It's like, who do I talk to? In my opinion, like that's what's being woke, is just saying, you know what, I'll accept who I am because that's what I can give. I don't want to be this idea or this stereotype of what Black means to you, but I'm gonna be that young Black man, that nice young Black man, because that's just who I am. Like, I can't fake that. I can't fake the smile. When I'm wearing a mask, I have to push my eyes up a little bit more just to show that I'm smiling under it, because I'm not scary. I wouldn't kill a spider if I had to. Depends on the day. But like, it's those things of accepting who you are and not being afraid to truly accept that and being truthful. So of course there are days much harder than others where I have to push a little harder to be myself, to say, you know what, Solomon, keep running your race full steam ahead, because that's what makes you Solomon. And I can't change that.
Definitely keep running your race, Solomon. And you said earlier, who do you talk to? I want to introduce you to the community of BMWs. Welcome to the community. So if you need somebody to talk to, you got some brothers who are on the same track you're on, and some guys who run a lap or two ahead of you already, who can help you navigate through it a little bit better, because it is challenging, and you're not an anomaly. And I think for me, that was one of the beauties about having this conversation, is to realize that there are a lot of BMWs. And so I only gathered a few of them, but every one of you know at least 10 other guys that you could have called that could have been a part of this conversation. I know another 10, 20 guys that I could have called to be a part of this conversation. And so it's not that you're the only nice Black guy, or I'm the only well-spoken Black woman, or you're the only one with a degree, or you're the only one that's intelligent. We know a lot of people. And you know, and I'm not going to put Adam on blast, but he didn't do his PSA justice. And so I'm going to help him like I help you, Timashion, because I'm going to tell you, everything we're describing is what his PSA is. He talks about the respectable part of himself that society is willing to accept. But what about the other parts of me that are also me? you know, the parts that would not seem like the nice, respectable person with the degree, the person who wears the Brooks Brothers suit that Ken talked about a couple of weeks ago, the one who stands up straight and talks in complete sentences, not because you're talking white, like Jonathan talked about a couple of weeks ago, but because you're talking the language of English, you know. And so again, he talks about in this PSA how there are different facets to who he is, but people only want to accept one part. And so part of me being woke, one of the things that I have to remind myself to do on a regular basis is something that Timashion taught me, is just say, what up, though? And it even sounds strange when I say it, because that would just be so not me. And anybody who knows me is like, and what they would say is Dr. Black trying to pretend to be Black? And you guys know I can't pretend, because that's who I am. And I can't blend in nowhere. I'm going to be Black wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. And so part of being woke, though, is definitely this level of consciousness that says, I am who I am by virtue of who God designed me to be. And I can't be anything other than that. And I'm going to be the best version of me possible. And I'm not trying to blend in because I do fit in, but I'm trying to find the places that I fit. And I'm not trying to knock down walls or burst through ceilings, because I know my gifts make room for me. And so I'm just waiting on the doors to open. And as they open, I'm walking through the door, but I'm not walking through alone, because I'm not the only one. When I'm walking through, I'm making sure I'm taking somebody with me. And I talked about this on a previous show about the importance of taking somebody with you, because one, you want to establish the fact that you're not the only one. But then two, you want to witness, because a lot of times people will say things to you behind closed doors and then deny they said it. So you want to witness for what was being said. But also, if God has opened the door for you, you want to be a blessing to somebody else and pass that on and open the door for them too. So all of you, all the guys, all the BMWs, as you're thinking about things that you're doing, there's somebody who's watching this who is saying, man, I wish I could do what Marcus is doing. I want to be a part of Solomon's show that he got coming up. Man, I want to join Corey and be a part of the voters advocacy. Man, I want to hook up with Dedrick and do some of the things he's doing in his community. Man, can I call Terrence? Can I get with Ken? Can I get with Mark? Can I get with Vaughn? Can I get with Adam? Absolutely, you can. That's why the BMWs are here. They are here to help provide an education and some enlightenment to let you know that the brothers are doing it. So guys, you know, I know we're going to run out of time before we get a chance to say everything everybody wants to say. And I got a couple more questions, but before I go to my questions, I just want to open the mics up so all of you guys can open your mics up. And if there's something burning on your heart, something that you say, you know what, before the show is over tonight, I want to make sure I got a chance to say. This is your moment to do that before I ask some closing questions.
Well, can I chime in here? Because I have to go, guys. I apologize. I have an
Absolutely.
8 o'clock. Well, it's 5 o'clock out in California time, a client. But you guys
Keep
basically,
rubbing in that you in California.
no, we're suffering out here, 70-degree weather, clear sky, but we just suffer for the Lord. We just making it happen. But no, on the true side, I just wanted to say, everybody said what I agree with. And I think that, to me, we asked the question of woke. And to me, that starts with identifying, being cognitive that we were asleep. And it's kind of like that movie Matrix, when they didn't realize they were plugged into not the reality. And then in a movie where he said, my eyes hurt because you never seen before, you never used your eyes before. And I think that this generation, we're looking for, if I may speak spiritually, for our Moses. We're looking for this generational Moses. I think we need to be led, and we need us, I guess, as BMWs, I'm a Mercedes guy, but BMW to, but we're looking to be led. And I think the younger generations, I know in Detroit, out here in Los Angeles, they're still protesting, they're still supporting, and they're just looking to be led. And I think it's responsible for us to be that Moses, if you will. And lastly is the trauma, whether it's the racial trauma, the complex trauma, the importance of mental health, even us to get mentally healthy, to make sure that, you know, the sick can't help the sick. So make sure that we're healthy enough and just get some type of networking going where we could say, hey, this is traumatic, and this whole cognitive dissonance is really what's going on. If you guys know what that, know what that's about, because we're seeing the injustice, and how do we stomach that? How do we, there's no answers. I cannot explain to my daughter or my son or to someone else. So we have to just make sure we're healed to the best of our ability of this trauma that we're dealing with, and then be that Moses for our younger generation to lead them out of this into the promised land.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Let's lead somebody to the promised land. And I think that, definitely people are looking for a leader in this generation, but I think all of us are responsible for leading in our circle of influence.
Yeah.
And so you may not lead the entire nation, but if you can lead a whole group out of the dark, if you can wake some people up, let's wake up as many people as we can.
Right.
Thanks, Mark. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. Good having you with us tonight. I know you told me you were going to have to jump off, but thanks for stopping by.
Nice to meet you, brothers. Hope to see y'all again when I go out there to Detroit, obviously. Or y'all could come over here. I'll take y'all to Roscoe's. Y'all heard of Roscoe's?
Yeah, I love Roscoe's.
All right.
Coming from
Bless you guys.
Roscoe.
Love y'all.
All right, take care. All right, so somebody else, something that you really want to make sure you mention before I ask my closing questions.
Things that I wanted to say, and Marcus had kind of hit on it, and I think he might have left. But one of the things that I think is different, and looking at the spirit of being radical in the Black community, I think the thing that is so different with this generation, and what I appreciate that's different from the other one, is that where this generation is demanding that we accept the entire Black person. Not that just that you're Black, but if you're Black and you're LGBTQ, so what? Because you're Black first. Nobody, you know what I'm saying? Like, just because, you're LGBTQ, you still get treated like a Black person, and we don't need to discriminate against our own. So I think this younger generation, the thing that they're actually leading us on is saying, hey, it's bigger fish to fry, and we need to all unite instead of being divided. And for so long, whether, like if we look at like during the 60s when the revolution was going on there, the Black revolutionaries, the Panthers, I love the Panthers, but the Panthers did not view their women as equal. And they definitely didn't view the LGBT community as a part of their revolution. James Baldwin did great things talking about Black people, but he couldn't express his sexuality and be accepted with that. If we go through the Harlem Renaissance, we had so many Black people that was part of the LGBT community, from Neil Hurston, that they couldn't express it. So that is what's different, and I think this is why we see it continuing, and so many people joining in with it, and it's sustaining because it's truth. And when you expose the truth, you can't hide it. So I think I'm glad that this generation is demanding that we accept all Black lives, because all Black lives do matter, So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go a step further, Ken. All Black lives matter, all white lives matter, all red, yellow, green, blue, orange, purple lives matter. Life itself matters. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that life matters, and life starts in the womb. When we're being formed and fashioned in our mother's womb, life is beginning. And even then, life matters. I got a chance to see an interview recently, one of the old clips from the Dick Cavett show of Baldwin, and it was incredible interview that he was doing. And so again, there's a lot of old clips back that people need to go back and take a look at, because the conversation that we're having is not a new conversation. These are conversations that have been going on for a long time. I believe, however, though, in this season, people are listening a little bit different, and we want to try to impact as much change as we can while people are listening. So anybody else before I go throw my question in there? All right, here we go. So here's the next question. So again, we talk about this idea of being woke and about things people need to know. Last week when you guys were talking history, man, you guys were spouting out some dates and some people and some places and some things. And I know folks was like, I never heard of that project. Now, what year was that? 1865? Was that 1619, 1960? What year was that? What was that about? And I think a lot of times people have gotten a miseducation, and then there are times people have not gotten an education at all. Even as I'm talking now about some Spike Lee movies, and people going now, what was the name of that movie? Who was Spike Lee? People just don't know. I know you guys are like, for real? People ask that. And so let's give a little bit of education. So think about it. If you could name like 3 or 4 movies or 2 or 3 movies that you feel like is just like a must see, but for every Black person, every white person, but anybody, if you want to learn a little bit about the Black culture or the Black experience, here's a good movie for you to take a look at. And keep in mind that some of these movies may be stereotypes. They may be the exaggeration of the culture, but it may give you a little bit of insight into how we live as a people. So anybody want to jump in? A couple movies. All right, Vaughn, you up there making faces. Go ahead and jump in. Then I'm coming to you next to my
I'm sorry. I'm going to say the beautiful and the talented Pam Grier, whatever she was in.
You just went sexist on us. Look.
I know, boy. No,
we're talking about racism. You're talking about
sexism. I know. Okay. I had to do it.
Pam Grier did make a lot of really good films, though.
Well, and I think the other thing was this. One of the things that we see is even car wash is when you can see stuff evolve from where it was to where it is now. And you can see that. Let me
pause for a moment because some people didn't catch that Car Wash was the name of a movie. All right, go ahead.
Right. And just to see how and it's hard, but I was just in a conversation with some of my white friends, and whenever we talk about racism, they always point to two types of people to say that racism don't exist: the athlete and the entertainer. And my response is, well, that was one of the only areas that Black folk could really excel in. And so either you're an athlete or you're an entertainer. I mean, how many times have you heard people be mad at Colin Kaepernick and say, well, he makes millions and millions of dollars, right? I mean, Muhammad Ali was at the top of his game when he voiced and he came out against it. And so for me, my movie, of course, is a classic, right? Malcolm X.
Okay.
I love that movie. And another one, Mo Better Blues, just the Spike Lee. I mean, I just, Spike Lee, he attacks that colorism, so important, along with School Days.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and give my two movies. One would be for color girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. And I got to tell you, it's a hard watch. It's a traumatic movie because of some of the things that happen amongst this group of women, but a great movie for relationships among women and how we sister one another and mother one another and care for each other in the trauma that we go through. And so that's for color girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. Long title, great movie, was also a play. Second one would be Color Purple. And I know a lot of people don't want to watch that long movie and they don't want to, me and you will never part, but Color Purple is definitely one of my movies. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give a third one right now. And this is one, I don't know if any of you have even seen, but it's Watermelon Man. Great old movie. Watermelon Man is a guy who wakes up another race. And I won't tell you if it's a Black man who wakes up white or a white man who wakes up Black, but they get a chance to walk in somebody else's skin. And it's called Watermelon Man. Excellent movie. It's an old class. After it came out in the 70s. All right, somebody else.
Melvin Van Peebles actually made Watermelon Man, was a great movie. I'll jump in and piggyback off of that. I would recommend probably another movie people may not have saw called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. The book is even better, but a lot of people don't like to necessarily read, but The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Also, I would honestly, and I know a lot of people might give me some flack for this, The Wiz, because I gotta see, Black people, like we can't always be it can't always be the revolution. We can't always have a teachable moment. Sometimes we got to show that, hey, guess what? We can sing and dance. And so my kids have seen The Wiz more than they have seen The Wizard of Oz, because I want to show them, hey, this is Black excellence. Also, what I like about The Color Purple is that, you know how many Black business owners was in there? Everybody was a Black business owner. It was like, so I love The Color Purple for that. I'm like, I understand it's definitely some traumatic scenes, but I like to point out the good things to my kids and say, hey, look, did you notice this? Everybody that owned something was Black. So
that's right.
It can
be owned the shop, the juke joint, and everything else, right?
Everything to her starting her own fashion line at the end. Everything was Black. So I just love, and I'll just stick with those two and endorse The Color Purple.
All right, somebody else. Go ahead, Solomon.
I guess so. Ken stole the thunder for The Wiz. I was going to say The Wiz. I love it for not just the Black excellence, but for our diversity, our what's the word I'm looking for? Not intersectionalism. how we can do multiple things. We're not just one thing, and it shows how, in general, like how people can be, like how we can do more than just one thing and not have to limit ourselves. So that's why I love The Wiz, but also just because I love musical theater. So that's my first one. I guess I'll go a little more lighthearted today. I'll say Sister Act 2 with Whoopi. So I love it. I love it when she takes the ragtag group of kids into this beautiful choir. It really shows how community how it takes more than just one person to raise the village. So just being this community aspect, but also some fun singing and dancing too. So,
cool. And I like Sister Act 1 and 2. But you know, as you talk about just the fact that we can do more things, and it's amazing the things that we can do when we try to do things. There's a new video clip going around on YouTube, and I don't know if you guys have seen a young Black girl who got a lot of flack for river dance. You know, so she was dancing and she had this YouTube video out, and everybody was blasting her like, what are you trying to do with that dancing you're over there doing? And Riverdance saw her video and have called her, and they're coming to her town, and they've invited her to participate in the cast. You know, and Girlfriend is awesome. And again, you know, who's going to think that, you know, when you go to take dance classes, you take ballet, you take African dance, you know, you take everything else, but you're not doing river dance, but she's doing the dance. And so again, we can do some things. Somebody else, movies. Corey, what's your movies? I got to unmute yourself.
All right, sorry, y'all. Okay, so obviously, I want to name a few of them. Malcolm X, I rewatched that recently, made me tear up. Harriet, watched that recently, made me want to burn my own house down. I watched Glory recently, the Denzel scene with the tear. Those movies, those are some of the classic ones that it's just like they hit you a different way. And I even remember watching them before, I guess not Harriet, but I remember watching them before, and watching them now as an adult, it's just like, you pick up on so much more, it's just different. It's really, really different. So I'll say those are movies that I've watched. A couple other quick things that I've seen on Netflix recently, kind of educational. There's the 13th, which I think somebody on here talked about that maybe last week or the week before, but it kind of talks about prison system, that prison school to prison pipeline. It kind of touches on some of all of that. So that's one thing. And then also there's a new one on Netflix called Teach Us All that also talks about, it's a little bit, it's kind of similar to that as far as like school to prison. But those are ones that I would recommend.
Okay, Timashion, Terrence.
Yeah, let me jump in here. So I certainly agree with Malcolm X, the Denzel version, Malcolm X. I certainly agree with The Wiz. However, I'm going to talk about one actor that was in The Wiz that you can watch any of his work, and that's Richard Pryor. He didn't have a big role in The Wiz. Well, he had a big role, but not a lot of time spent. Watch anything by Richard Pryor. First of all, it's good stuff. But secondly, when you really know about his life, and when you know how he was born, when you know about the issues he had when he was in the Army, when you know about just his whole coming together as an adult, and he's really started his career right during the Civil Rights Movement. And so he's breaking into Hollywood, and he's busting into the scene during a time when we were still fighting to be people, right? And he ends up listed as one of the top comedians of all time. And matter of fact, he's typically voted as the #1 comedian of all time. So it's for the work and the content, which was great, but it's also because of the time period during which he went to that greatness. It's just amazing. Richard Pryor, he's a man.
Yeah. So definitely, Richard Pryor did a lot of great work with Gene Wilder as well. But let me also, just as a cautionary point for people who are watching, let you know that some of these films are rated R. And so you do need to do due diligence before you sit your children down and watch some of these films. And also, just a side note, Terrence, that Richard Pryor is known for excessive profanity. And so again, just to be aware of that, you know, all of his films didn't include that, but I don't want anybody saying, as a Christian, Dr. Black sent you to watch this movie. All right, so just make sure you do due diligence. You read what the movie is about, you read the language and whatever the warnings are before you actually expose yourself to it. All right, Timashion?
Yeah, that's one of the sad parts about going last or towards the end. You know, a lot of people didn't shout out a few.
I got a whole list of movies over here.
I will. I know you got. When we were on the plane, you seen every movie that was.
I'm a big movie buff.
You know, But I definitely would have to agree with Mr. Black. Spook Who Sat by the Door was an extremely good movie, and it was extremely slept on. So a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about, but that's definitely something you want to check out, you know, about the CIA agent, you know, going in and helping out his community and everything. So, you know, when I look at movies, I'm looking like, okay, what is the impact? What do I walk away with at the end of the movie? You know what I'm saying? Do I walk away with, you know, let's help our people out, and if it comes to going to extremes, then that's what we got to do. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was a good work of art. A lot of you know, these movies are still movies, right? So, you know, I was gonna say Malcolm X. Malcolm X was good. It was also a movie I liked called The Deacons for Defense. That was really, really good. Non-known civil rights movie about a group of deacons that were civil rights activists, and they took care of their church and, you know, protected their people and you know, protest and march with rifles and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was cool. But then I also say you definitely got to watch Nate Parker's Birth of a Nation. They don't get a lot of play right now because of how people don't want to talk about Nat Turner at all when it comes to American heroes. They just want to belittle him and buy his movie and then just shelf it. So he don't get the free looks from Hulu and Amazon Prime to say, hey, watch these movies, you know, for Black history and all that stuff for free. You're not gonna get Birth of a Nation for free. They like, no, we're not even gonna allow, you know, you to watch that. So you don't hear too much about it, but I think it was a beautiful story about you know, Nat Turner.
Yeah, and see, you're not last. You know, I always got some more points to make. So, so a couple of my other favorite movies, 12 Years a Slave. I'm telling you, when I saw that, I cried literally. It just broke my heart to think that here was a free man, you know, a prosperous, well-to-do free man who got captured and taken into slavery. And I'm just thinking, how does that happen? You know, and to think that he was there that long before he finally made it back out. But just the fortitude that he had and the perseverance that he had just to hold on, you know, till freedom came again, you know, but it was just like, whoa. But 12 Years a Slave is a great one. Now, here's one. I don't know if you guys are, some of you will be old enough to remember this, but this one was really hilarious for me, was Boys in the Hood. And the funny thing about this is that when I went and saw Boys in the Hood, I went with a group of counselors, and it was like one of those late night movies. We sat on the front row up front, and I'm looking up at the screen, and I'm looking going, whose neighborhood is this? You know, I'm like, well, who lives like this? And it was just not what I knew as the Black experience. I mean, I just kept thinking, people live, I mean, and so it was a hard watch for me to watch Boys from the Hood. And everybody kept looking over at me going, you are Black, right? You are Black. I'm thinking, yes, but whose life is this? And they start naming people. And I'm like, oh my God, for real? I mean, because it was just like, it was like a hard look at ghetto life, you know, if you would. But again, somebody's reality and a lot of people's reality. And so that was another really good one, just in terms of getting a good experience of things. Anybody else want to jump in and mention something? Want to leave anybody out?
So let me, I was just going to say, since I didn't get to go, but it's so interesting that you all mentioned that you mentioned in the beginning, school days, because a kid like me growing up in Henderson, Kentucky, where there was no exposure to the HBCU aspect, at least at that point in time in 1989 when the movie came out. I had no idea. School Days became instantly my favorite movie. And while I didn't attend an HBCU, when it came down to where I was going to sign my scholarship to go to, it was down to an HBCU or a Division I school. And for a number of reasons, I chose the Division I school. And do I regret it in a lot of ways? Yes and no. But School Days is my all-time favorite movie. And anybody who has not seen it, I encourage you to do it. Or to watch it. Another movie that I had was the Madam C.J. Walker series. Like, if you don't know The Art of the Hustle, that movie shows and teaches you and walks you through the art of the hustle and becoming successful at doing it. The other one, and I'll drop off here, but it's Moonlight. If you hadn't seen Moonlight, it's definitely one that I would definitely check out as well.
Awesome. You know, it's interesting. And let me say too, again, as we're doing these warnings for, for movies and different things, it's like Moses. You know, when people think about the Ten Commandments, you know, the Cecil B. DeMille version of it, great production. I mean, that's one of my favorite movies. I watch it 2 or 3 times during the season when it comes back on. But you got to fact check, you know. And so even when you do things like C.J. Walker and, you know, Spook Who Sat by the Door, in any movie that you watch, read the book, because the book will give you more of the facts, because the movie is made for Hollywood. You know, it's made for cinematic purposes. And so they put a few extra things in, they take a few things out. So make sure that when you're watching whatever you're watching, you go back and do some research on it. You know, it's like Hidden Figures. Man, that was an incredible movie. I mean, it's like everybody needs to see Hidden Figures. You know, everybody needs to see Lee Daniels, you know, the butler, you know. So it's like, you got to see it. And then realize that there was a real person that was a Lee Daniels. It's like, wow. You know, so again, you got to be able to go back and see some of those classic Black films. So switching it up a little bit here, Ken, I know you had somebody you wanted to say, but historical figures, because we've mentioned Malcolm X and we've mentioned, you know, a couple other people, but who are some little known Black history figures that you feel like people need to go do some research on and people need to know a little bit more about? And so 2 or 3 people jump in. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Well, I'm going to say Dr. King. And the reason I say Dr. King is because people forget how radical Dr. King is. You know, it really irritates me when I see my white evangelical friends on Facebook post quotes on Dr. King. And you know that if they heard Dr. King, they wouldn't agree with it. If they picked up the letters from a Birmingham jail or they read some of his other stuff, they would be like, this guy is a race baiter. This guy is a complainer. This guy is playing the victim. Just think, Dr. King graduated at 15 years old from high school and then got his college degree before most people graduate high school, and he's taking a stand. So I think the revisionist history of Dr. King is something that people need to really look at.
That's a good point. Again, looking at the history. Somebody else. Corey? Unmute yourself there. Okay.
Yep. Am I unmuted? You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. What I'll say is that I would, 2 people that I think that people should read up on. Well, first 3, I'm sorry. James Baldwin, because you mentioned him earlier. Just absolutely amazing. A couple of works of his, because I don't want to forget anything. I'm Not Your Negro and Remember This House. Just really amazing work by James Baldwin. He's a phenomenal speaker. His perspective on things is amazing. Another one, Frederick Douglass. If you have ever read his What Does July 4th Mean to a Slave? If you've not read that and you read that, like the hair on your arms will literally stand up. Another one that I have, another one that's really good, and this actually isn't even a book, but this was a speech. It's called the Cornerstone Speech. It was written by the Confederate Vice President. This is, we're talking 2 months before the Civil War started. And if you just read his speech, like he's got, I guess, essentially 3 main points in the speech, and he saves the best for last, which is the continued enslavement of Africans. And when you read the way that he talks about it and just kind of the flippant, nonchalant way that he just talks about Black people in our lives and how it's almost laughable to him that it's even a discussion on whether or not we should continue slavery because of what it's doing for economics. Like when you just read those kind of things, and it makes you start to read other stuff. So I'll say those 3 things. Those 3 things are 3
Name that again, Corey, the last title.
Yeah, it's called the Cornerstone Speech. It was written by the Vice President of the Confederacy. His name is Alexander Stephens. It was written on March 21st, 1861, but it's called the Cornerstone Speech. The entire speech is, I mean, obviously it's written from the Confederates side, so you have to know the perspective that you're reading it from. But when you read their thought process, kind of how he was thinking, it's very, very powerful.
Great. Terrence and Solomon?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what Corey just said. One of the people is the one I wanted to mention, which is Frederick Douglass. I mean, when you just really look at what he did, being born a slave, teaching himself basically how to read because people didn't want to and they were taking it away from him, and how educated he was. And he basically defied the back then lie, which we kind of hear today sometime, about the Black dummy, that Black people aren't intellectual, aren't smart. He defied that during a time when we had slaves. And so he's just amazing. One other thing that I learned about him is that he was instrumental in helping Abraham Lincoln change his ideas about slavery from kind of going along with it to trying to go against it. So Frederick Douglass was he played a major role in that. I think we should look him up and study him.
Right.
So I would like to jump in too on my little known Black history person. And this person would have never been on my radar in a million years if I didn't live where I live at, which is Springfield, Missouri. So Springfield, Missouri has a history that's rich with racism. And so in 1835, a Black woman named Millie Sawyers sued for her freedom here in Springfield, Missouri. And she won it in 1835. All white male jury. 1835. The founders of the town, after she won her freedom, you know what they did to return the favor? They beat her. They beat her until she ran out of town. So she went through the legal system. She did all the right things and they beat her. But what I love about this fact is this, because I just had to kind of double check some things. So when this occurred in like 1835, Frederick Douglass, I think, was born in like 1818. So like we give like a lot of credit to the men, the Black men who have did things, but it was Black women who have done things as well. It's Black women that have been on the forefront in legal issues and things like that. Also, Springfield is also known for another thing. After the Brown versus Board of Education thing took place in Kansas, the young lady, she couldn't go to school in Kansas. So she moved down to Springfield, Missouri, and she actually graduated from high school here in Springfield, Missouri. So I would also say, like, you know, I would also like to say, hey, the little young girl, and I can't think of her first name right now, but that's someone else that, you know, like her history, and she's still alive, is rich. And then we can also talk about how we thought Brown versus Board of Education was the integration of all schools and everything was fine and dandy, but actually it was a case took place like years after that. It basically nullified Brown versus Board of Education. So educate ourselves about these cases, and we're like, yay. But really, some other things occurred behind there, and I'm pretty sure Brother Terrence could probably speak to that a little more eloquently about the legal thing.
All right, Solomon, you want to jump in?
Sure. For me, I would say Brian Stevenson, civil rights attorney, as well as Mamie Till, just to go along what Ken was saying with the women. Because the mothers had they played a lot of roles in making sure that we were okay, making sure that everything was taken care of. So like they're almost the unsung heroes. I would say any Black mother today who's still living, who's still alive, has done so much. So that would be my historical figure. Sometimes all I have to do is just ask, and they're willing to share their story. My mom is my historical figure. So just listening to how she, like, what was her thought process behind going up to the school when I would call her and say they're not treating me right, or I need to come home, I'm feeling sick. Like what goes through her head? Like what goes through her head, and like how does she feel? And not just how she feels, but why does she feel that? So any Black mother living today who has lived in the past, they're worth studying. They're a wealth of knowledge right there. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for saying that, Solomon. I think we're going to end with that because that's kind of where the conversation actually began. The conversation. You want to go? Go ahead. Jump in there, Timashion.
I got one. I can't go without putting them out there. You know what I'm saying? All right. Thank you for maybe going over a second or two, but
that's all right.
That's executives, man, you definitely gotta put them on. I gotta give a shout out to the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. All right. This guy influenced the parents of Malcolm X, influenced the parents of Martin Luther King, and was influenced by W.B. Du Bois and most importantly, Booker T. Washington. The reason why he came over here in order to help put together a school in Jamaica, kind of similar to what Booker T did in Tuskegee. And, from Carter G. Woodson and A.J. Rogers, all these different people that he had writing for these papers and putting out newspapers all over the world and putting together businesses, and people was investing in stocks and bonds. I mean, he had literally millions of people that he connected with before social media, and he did some things that people don't want you to know about. That's why you know very little about Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but I definitely say look him up, read the Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey and any kind of work that talks about his life and his organization and what he did. So, yeah, that's the one person I couldn't go without saying.
Yeah, you know, there really are so many people. And again, even though these are some names that maybe you've heard before, we're saying go back and fact check, go back and look up some additional information because there's so much more. I mean, there's so much more even to the BMWs that are on the screen right now that they couldn't tell it all tonight. They just told a little bit of it. But even as I was saying that, you know, Solomon talked about his mom as a hero and mothers as hero, or any mom who's made a difference. And that's where this conversation started. It started with the conversation on race between African-American women and Jewish women, because they wanted to come together and talk about what it was like to raise Black sons. It started because somebody's knee was on somebody's neck. And we know that as Black people, we have dealt with so much oppression and repression that, I mean, we repressed a lot of emotions, a lot of trauma, and now people are dealing with depression and anxiety and other things. And so I got to tell you that there's so much more that could be said, but we just can't say it all tonight. So I'm inviting you to tune back in again next week for part 4. And that's going to be the conclusion on the conversation on race with the BMWs. But after that, we're going to be having the conversation on colorism. One of the things that stood out from that movie that we talked about, School Days, was a song between a couple of different groups in the movie. And it was the light-skinned girls versus the dark-skinned girls. I'm not even calling you, say what they called each other. But you've heard some of those names. We talked last week about the names that we've been called, from nicknames to names that were not so nice. But it's important to remember that all people are essential, all people have value, and all lives matter. So I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thanks to the guys who had to jump off, to Marcus Granderson. Thanks to Mark Crear. Thank you, Dedrick Tillerson, for joining us. Thank you, Solomon Dudley. Thank you, Terrence Quinn. We're so glad to have you as guest panelists with us tonight. We look forward to maybe having you engage with us for something in the future. Make sure that you stay connected. And of course, we big shout out to my regular panelists, to Timashion Jones, to A Nickleberry, to Ken Black, to Corey Myrick, to Jonathan Huff, who was not able to be with us tonight. Keep him in your prayers, and to BJ Pearson. Again, tune in next week, 7 o'clock Monday night, for the conclusion of the conversation on race with the BMWs. Thanks so much. I'm Dr. Sabrina Black. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I always like to see who holds on to the end. Bye, guys. Thanks a lot.